I am Belén Lozano. I come from Spain, and I'm a professor at the University of Valencia in the south of Spain. I'm teaching translation studies, German and English.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Thank you. And we have a new co-host, and that's Ash Black. Ash, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Jake. Thanks for having me in. Appreciate it. Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Ash Black. I'm an educator at the University of Arizona. I teach entrepreneurship and technology, and I really love working with students of all ages because they're so brilliant, and that's where all the great ideas come from. And I guess my latest and greatest is that I'm kind of really into extended reality and VR and AR, and that's a blast. So I don't know that that's relevant, but that's kind of what makes my world go round lately.
Yes, and later tomorrow, that's what Perrin was talking about. There's going to be a whole group discussion on AI. So,
brilliant! Yeah, excellent. Excellent.
Check the schedule. You can join that.
Cool.
Great. And now, with no further delay, we have our next presenter, Sharon. Sharon, can you please introduce yourself and start your presentation? Looking forward to this.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk to all of you. I am a 40-year marketer because I started working when I was 7. And so I have been at the forefront of what we call emerging businesses that range from sports marketing to entertainment marketing to cable television, back when we were trying to convince people to pay for something that was already free. And I worked in video games, and I've launched a bunch of titles. One probably some people know, it's called Grand Theft Auto. And I launched it with a $100,000 budget when it was not the very graphic and violent game that it is today. As a matter of fact, it was so ugly, we could only promote it on radio. And so we try to convince people to play it that way. But throughout my years in marketing, and marketing basically means we're trying to tell you the value of a product and use words that will help you understand why that's appealing. It didn't start out meaning to trick you into a purchase. It really started out trying to explain why a laundry detergent gave you whiter whites. And so in my years in video games, I realized that that medium was completely different from anything that I'd come across before that, and loved the idea of using games for helping people. And so my company name is Happy People Games, because at this stage in my life, I figured, I think that games could actually make people happier, and not just for shooting aliens out of the sky. And so I partnered with a psychologist years ago, and we created a game called Luminous, and it was meant to boost girls' self-esteem. And it was at the advent of the App Store from Apple. And to my great shock, it became a top 5 app in 34 countries in our first 4 months with a $10,000 marketing budget. And the anecdotal feedback that I got was both heartwarming and important enough for me to take it seriously. And so I formed what's called a multidisciplinary team, which means I have researchers and educators and behavioral psychologists. And we decided to tackle sexual misconduct, because when somebody is a victim or a perpetrator involved in sexual misconduct, it can ruin their lives. And since we live in the era that we do, that something like a game could really be harnessed to help people understand what misconduct is, what rape is, how it spirals out of control very quickly, and all of that. And so I secured grants from the US Department of Education and the National Institutes of Health, and I created apps that used video game mechanics that I thought could make a difference. And I was kind of hoping, we had to run clinical trials and randomized trials. I was kind of hoping that 50% of our high school and college participants would like it. And to my shock, 90% and more felt that it could help them form more healthy relationships, felt that they now understood what it is, that they were more confident that they would know what to do if they were in that situation. And we did an adult version that we tested with over 125 participants from around the world, China, South America, both Eastern and Western Europe. And we actually reduced the rate of involvement in sexual misconduct. And so the notion of using game mechanics was not invented by me. There's an educator at Yale who, with her colleagues, created a playbook that basically told folks how to choose game mechanics with what we call behavior theories, which means it's already been proven and it already works in real life. And so being the very detailed person that I am after all those years of working with companies like MTV and Nabisco cookies and all those kinds of businesses, I didn't just use it for guidance. I actually took apart all of the pieces of those theories and aligned my content with it and had entertainment writers write my content. And so our outcomes were stupendous. And I can just tell you that when I started it, my friends in media and marketing and business kind of said, "What are you trying to do? Why are you doing that?" And I said, "Look, I feel like somebody has to try. It's such a big problem. 1 out of 4 women experience it by the time they're in college, and 1 out of 6 18-year-old boys have experienced it. And nothing that had been done was working. Nothing was pulling those numbers back down. And because only 9% of rapists have a clinically diagnosed psychosis, as a marketer or a business person, my feeling was that 91% of people didn't understand what was going on. And to give them a truly robust, gamified experience, my hope was that we could reduce the rate of sexual misconduct, and P.S. we did. And so for people who have crazy, wacky ideas, like addressing sexual misconduct with a digital app and using game mechanics to do it, it's been a 5-year journey, didn't happen overnight. I learned a lot. Working with research scientists, I did more Googling of words than I think I've done in my entire life so that I could keep up. And I became sort of the interpreter, if you will. I helped my game developers translate what it was we were trying to do from the research. And for my researchers, I was translating, okay, here are the game mechanics that we're going to use. I'm going to hire these writers. They're going to do what you're saying, but they're not going to say it the way you do. Because if we say it the way you do, I think people are either going to not do it or they're going to leave. They're going to fall asleep, right? Because it's very dense, those theories. It's full of all kinds of words, like I said, that I had never heard of, but I understood, like self-determination theory, which basically means you figure it out on your own. So we don't actually in our app say, oh, you shouldn't do that because you would be a terrible person if you did that. We don't do things like that. And the other thing that we did is we customize it to people's personalities, because in my training, it became very clear that we're all different. P.S. we know that. But when you're taking a training like that, the feedback that you get has to be something that you're actually able to do based on your personality. We had one football player say, well, I'd punch him in the face. And I was like, okay, we don't want that either. And I had a girl say, well, I could never scream out in a bar and say, don't do that. And so we wanted to customize the input that we gave so that people felt that they could actually do what it was we were suggesting that they think about doing. And so the forum that is here, which I just love, which is innovation, we're all innovators. But I think that what we need to do is harness the innovator inside of us and know that even though it doesn't seem like it makes sense, probably makes sense to people if you go beating the bushes and looking for people who kind of will think like you and work with you. And, you know, we all had to speak a new language working together from a business and research and technology standpoint. But I'm so fortunate to have had a team that was willing to do it. And poof, we had this innovation that is now going to be used by police departments and colleges and universities, and hopefully do some good to give people the ability to have those happier lives without being scared or depressed or fearful or all kinds of other things that are a result of sexual misconduct. Does anybody have any questions?
There we go. Sharon, that was awesome. It's super interesting. I have questions and comments. Where do you see it? What you've done is, it sounds like what you've done is that you've applied game mechanics and the gamification of experience. So it's like, what I got from it was that you can simulate it, so you don't have to actually experience it. It's safer, right? You can experience it. And what I got from what you were sharing is that you can make it more playful and less shame or less judgment. It's more about exploring the edges. And I imagine, I haven't played it, but I imagine that when you play it, you kind of like, you go, and you're like, oops, I didn't mean to say that, you know? And so
Right.
people can kind of break the ice, right? And it seems like there's probably tremendous opportunity in pretty much any social domain. And I'm wondering what your thoughts about, I mean, you've got Happy People games, right? And so you've got this one sexual misconduct application, but what are you thinking about in terms of, gosh, you could learn almost anything, like what it's like to go to another culture or, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what we really wound up with is a behavior improvement platform that was evidence-based. And so we don't actually simulate a rape at all. What we do is we use a lot of different situations and we say, okay, you're in this situation, what would you do? And then we also myth bust, because sexual misconduct is full of misunderstandings of all kinds of things. And so we used a different mechanic to achieve that. And then we also have videos, because sometimes it's a lot to take in. And so we pause and we summarize and we emphasize. And then we have a time challenge so that we can actually give you active practice. Okay, you're in this situation, you've got 10 seconds. What are you going to do? Because that's real life, right? And to your point, there's one college in particular who I'm visiting in a couple of weeks. We had done a prototype using the same type of mechanics for racial bias prevention. And so they'd actually like us to get that fully developed for their use sooner versus later. We can do emotional intelligence. I feel like emotional intelligence has become a moniker that's been abused. And so when we're really talking about emotional intelligence, and that same college wants to now use our platform for training nurses to be more empathetic, and EMS workers. And I feel like it can also do trade training, and we can integrate augmented reality into that. The thing about what we're doing right now is that a benefactor funded us with quite a lot of money to build out the platform that we have. And now it's using that built out technology to apply it to other things. But if you use Web3 and all of the AI graphic tools that are available now, it really doesn't have to be the $20 million technology build that it used to have to be. And I have this development team that has figured out how to make it platform agnostic, meaning it can work on your smartphone, whether it's Android or Apple. It can work on your tablet. It can work on your PC or your Mac. And so we're platform agnostic. And I had one police chief who said to me after I gave him a demo, "You had me at app," because he said, my officers are mostly young and they would much rather use an app to learn this kind of thing than sit in a classroom with peers. and say out loud what they're actually thinking. So it's beautiful, beautifully matched up with these very sensitive, private types of topics that we're still unfortunately putting people in a room and asking them to say things that they just don't want to say out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you for that question. That was perfect.
If I may just follow up with a couple comments about it, because I just find it a really stimulating conversation. But one is that when you mentioned about addressing racial bias, the idea that occurred to me is that since you can have the experience repetitively in the game, it's almost like, how we condition people to become stronger with their phobias. Like you get to experience the environment a little bit more. So it's just a way of kind of like letting people get outside of their comfort zone and interact with people that they normally don't interact with as much. And so that seems like a really positive use of technology. And then just one other comment, which is that I teach some undergraduate classes, and I've seen in the last 2 years since the pandemic and then returning to in person that there has been a shift in the expectations, or rather kind of the comfort level that the students have. They don't really know quite where they are like they did before. They're a little bit more lost. And they're also generationally more comfortable with apps, right?
Right.
So it seems to me that just having a little experience, like what's it like to go to college, and you play the app game, they will do that and it'll work. They'll do that over the summer. It's a great recruiting tool for the universities, right?
Yes.
Like what's it like to study at the University of Arizona, that kind of thing. Every university would want one eventually. As you mentioned, the price is dropping. So
Right.
it just seems really, seems like a really great feature. And thanks for sharing it, because it gives me ideas of things to do this summer. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's really quite cool.
Well, I'd love to show it to you if you're interested. But the other part about all of this is education, rightly so, stays hyper focused on the things you need to learn to get a job,
Mhm.
right? And what I love about my the college that is asking us to stretch faster than we thought we were going to stretch with these other topics is we all know that we have to improve on these things that are not a part of curriculum. Jake, I heard you talking about how invention is never going to be part of curriculum, and that's a tragedy of massive proportion, right? Because that's really what you have to do when you get out there, is innovate, look at problem solving as your friend instead of something to make you hyperventilate. And the other part is you look at the rising incidences of depression amongst youth coming. And it's not just pandemic. It is pandemic, but it's also not, right?
Right.
And so what I worry about is how much we are boosting self-esteem. And so learning can be, you can become full of self-esteem when you learn. I took my grandson to Lego Park just yesterday, and he was so proud of himself for doing all sorts of things at Lego Park. And I, as the grandmother, I am there to like make sure he understands that he's the bomb, and he's all that, right? But we don't really do that because we don't have time. And so those life skills and those things that really are going to power you through your school years and into your jobs and into, to me, it's kind of like, especially working on the sexual assault prevention app, I feel like the next app I'm going to create is how to be a good human, right? Because we're just not teaching that. And you've got all kinds of cultural contributors to that. Kids aren't going to church as much. Parents are busy and both working. I feel like one of the things that we want to do is encourage people to think about things they can do as humans and without vitriol, right? Just right. It's not just about my idea is better than your idea, or I'm right and you're wrong. Good Lord. If we lived like that, we'd be back in the dark ages. P.S. We don't want that to happen, right? And so just what I love about video games is because people can be an avatar. My kids made all kinds of friends around the world and never even knew who they were talking to, but their world expanded because they were meeting people through video games and creating bonds. And it made them less afraid than to get out in the world. And so if I can make some small contribution towards that, I would be very happy. And I'm, just grateful that this whole thing came to me as an issue, because I actually thought it was a very expensive hobby there for a while.
You talked about using this at college level and talk about with police officers, but do you have a sort of a different version that would be used for younger students?
I do. So we had done, our earlier work was with high school and college. And my feeling is, first of all, they're very receptive. Watching a bunch of high school students say they had no idea that sexting was illegal and a felony was was mind-blowing to me. I was like, really? They were like, all our friends do it. I was like, so does that mean you're a lemming? I mean, and that's kind of the point that I was making about, we're just not teaching these sort of block and tackle basics, because for a lot of reasons. It's no one's fault. It's just the social environment we're in. But yes, we are maturity relevant to high school, college, and for the workplace. We started talking to folks in the military. They've got a big problem. And, it's not, as a marketer, I dig into research, and it's not some one group's fault here.
But Sharon, I'm going to interrupt for a second. Yes, these adults and the high school and the college students have a problem. Fine. It didn't just suddenly happen. If you want to cure the disease, you've got to go when it's, just in the beginning. I really think you need something for elementary and middle school and for those students. I mean, I teach at a school, and if you could tell me that you've got something for middle school, that would be fantastic.
I would love to do it for middle school. As a matter of fact, my high school focus group said, you got to get this to middle school, because my little brother or sister, this is all they're talking about. The middle school district, we have not found one friendly to the topic. And so, yeah, if you want to bring it in,
okay.
I'm all.
I know the principal of a middle school, and we can get this into that school. And if you want to run a test program, I've got the platform for you.
We take a lighter touch with the high school students. We're actually story-based versus scenario-based, and still evidence-based, still using all of the evidence for guidance, but we're hyper aware, like that whole thing with sexting. We don't actually say in the app from us, that's a felony. We let a chat amongst peers bring that out. And then the kids would all say to me after they got done using it, your app is wrong. It's not a felony. I'm like, no, my app is right. It is a felony, right? And so it allows you to facilitate that kind of conversation. But yes, we understand where the issue is. And, I also would just say that coming out of media and entertainment, I am extremely aware of the effect that those forces have on development. And so this isn't penance, but this is sort of my taking my awareness and experience with those environments and driving towards a different goal.
I'm just telling you, if you're 27 years old, you should know that what is right and what is wrong. But if you're 10, you honestly don't know, and you need to bring that up.
Yeah, I hear you, Jake, and I'm with you on it. But I will tell you that we tested in a community college, and I had somebody in his early 30s who had just left the military, and he stopped me in the middle of my focus group interview. It was a randomized trial, and said, look, I get yes means yes and no means no, but does yes mean no if she's had 3 drinks? That was a genuine question.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there's a lot of gray area where, there is the overt and clear, that's a no, but a lot of situations are occurring through the gray. We had 9% of our college participants had raped somebody and did not realize it. And so my point is that this issue lacks training, let's call it training. And there's a lot of blanks in there that need to be filled in, not just for the kids, but also for the adults. I mean, you've got millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits. Businesses really need to address this because they can't, I mean, $1.1 billion one college had to fork over last year. This year, $650 million. The price tags are getting higher and the payouts are becoming more frequent because the victims know now that they can sue. And so, and rightly so. But those payouts, man, it's going to make everybody go broke. But anyway, it's a moral need. It's a financial need. And really, it goes back to my point about we just need to help people understand the context of being a good human.
No, I agree. I have a question backing up though, and I'm sorry, Bailey, and I keep getting excited about this. You mentioned Grand Theft Auto. So what happened? How did it come into
Well, the publisher I worked for sold it to Take-Two.
Really, it is a gross negative on society. What
It
happened?
is. So it started out as this top-down little sprite game, and it was so ugly I could only advertise it on radio. I mean, it just was. And I talked to a psychologist because I had to defend it on Fox News. And her point to me was, you're talking about a period of maturation where people need to explore good versus evil. And that I understand that because I knew the president of Lucasfilm. And he said to me, look, Sharon, nobody wants to be Luke Skywalker. They all want to be Darth Vader at Halloween. So I get that. And she said, you're giving them that exploration and the safety of a digital game. The company that I had published it on PC. We were about to publish it on PlayStation. We started getting ticking clocks in packages, and we sold it to Take-Two, and they then made it into something that it didn't start out being. So it is hyper violent. It is way too graphic. That isn't the game that I signed up for, but they're welcome nonetheless, because I launched it on a very small budget and on radio.
So I think that you can then be the cure for Grand Theft Auto. I'm being serious. I'm being serious because kids look at that and they take that as reality. They really do. And so your program now can be an alternative reality, a good reality that they can get involved with.
And thus we have the human experience, right? That's where we're always going to be. There has to be a positive force when there's a negative force. And there was a study out years ago that said the brain can't tell the difference between real and virtual. And so when I started undertaking this, it was really a bet with myself, both for the girls' self-esteem game and this. I thought, okay, I don't know that it can get harder than sexual misconduct prevention. And if this works, then I will make this the rest of my life. And so it did work in spades, far exceeding my expectations. And so I'm with you, Ash. There are all sorts of things that we can do. We now have the know-how, but we have to do it with the evidence, because I'm convinced that my stew of media writers, multidisciplinary team researchers, and my fabulous developers who completely were on board with the mission is how we got those results.
Well,
It wasn't easy.
good things never are. Good things never.
Right. And that's the other part about innovation. Everyone who wants to be an innovator, say you want to be an innovator, but strap in. It's not that. And stick with it.
Yeah, good. We're going to clip out just that part, and that's going to be. Thank you Sharon, thank you very, very much. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Very interesting, and more important than interesting, it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.